Hello, and welcome to Good News Rhode Island, the show about the people who work behind the scenes in Rhode Island to bring us great events and organizations, the people who are helping our children, helping elderly, helping the artistic community, or artists themselves. All these people are celebrated on this show, Good News Rhode Island. They don't often appear on the front pages. Today we're going to talk about a collaboration of 315 poets or writers who are all living in Rhode Island and who belong to an association called the Association of Rhode Island Authors. It's an amazing thing to think of 350 people and we say, we have such a small state, how can that be? Well, part of it is that we have great institutions, we have great education, and now here we are talking with the president of ARIA, Stephen Porter. Welcome, Stephen. Thank you for being here. And we're so happy that there are 315 writers or more in Rhode Island. And sometimes groups don't know about each other. So this is a place where we can all talk and find out about other people who are doing the same thing that we're doing.
I can say that there are 315 writers and there are 315 published authors in our group. And many, many more out there that we're just still learning about.
So you're still taking applications?
We always welcome a new writer.
Okay, well, let's start with you. You were educated here in Rhode Island, and somehow you had this desire to write, so you followed through on it.
Yeah, I mean, I attended the University of Rhode Island, and I was in the writing program there. I was the editor of the literary magazine. And I knew someday I wanted to produce the great American novel, I think like a lot of people out there. And like most people, I didn't get to it right away. It took many, many fits and starts and failures and 20 years before I had what I thought was a completed manuscript in my hand. Now, while I was writing, I was also working in the retail book industry and on the marketing side of publishing. So I was collecting a lot of experience in the business. Took my manuscript, did what everyone is supposed to do, which is send out those query letters, contact those publishers, and collected all the rejection letters.
Yes, which happens to everybody.
Which you hear about from every writer. And I then chose to take my first novel and go the self-publishing route. Once my book was completed and I had a book and I could market it and promote it, I realized that there was not a lot of support in the state for writers and authors. Writing is such a solitary thing that you're literally locked in your office or your room or your closet or wherever you like to write for hours and hours, weeks, months, years sometimes. And reading is also a solitary thing. So the connection between the reader and the writer is a one-on-one relationship. The other arts, music, theater, is more of a public kind of activity. So I immediately felt that we needed to have some collection of authors to work together, help work with the libraries, help work with bookstores, make the state aware of all these great authors that are out there. We have an extraordinary list of writers here in the state.
And they're all probably struggling the same way you did, which is not what kids know when they decide they want to be a writer somehow in 11th grade or whatever.
Of course, you just send your manuscript.
Yes, you just send this wonderful thing that you've edited and written in 10 days or less, and you send it out. And the truth is that art takes blood, sweat, and tears to get through.
And there's a real Jekyll and Hyde to the industry, because there's the artistic side of the business where you want to write and create the best work you can write. But there's also that business side. And no matter how good your work is, does it fit in a publisher's scheme of marketing, promotion, and sales? Mm-hmm. And that doesn't necessarily always fit together. And
that's not taught in writing courses and MFA programs.
Correct. And it's where collectively as authors we can get together and talk about those things.
So you have an organization, and how often do you meet?
We meet monthly.
Uh-huh.
And we started out, initially I reached out to 5 or 6 authors that I'd heard of. I didn't even know them personally, and asked if they wanted to be part of this new organization. I figured if we were lucky, we'd get 20. Mm-hmm. To participate. We could help each other market.
Be a good forum.
Bookstores. Mm-hmm. Just knock ideas back and forth between each other. We've never held a membership drive. Once the word got out that there were 5 or 6 of us doing this, authors just seemed to find us. Mm-hmm. And the need for that kind of work was evident to us right away that this was a big deal. And we grew. We're only in our 5th year, and we have 315 members, with a variety of books that would just amaze.
Well, you had an event recently that, what would you say? It highlighted all of these different authors. There were table after table of books and authors sitting there trying to talk about their books.
And that was exactly what we were hoping to achieve. Uh-huh. On this past December 3rd, we held our 4th annual Rhode Island Author Expo. We had 135 published authors in the room, all sitting at their own separate table with their own books, each talking about their books, signing books, selling books. And we incorporated other programs, some workshops and some presentations into that day. But it was an opportunity for readers to come out and meet one-on-one those people that they like to read. And it's fun for us because we see readers come into the show, and they'll have this wow factor. When you see this, we were at Rhodes on the Patuxent, so you had tons of space. Mm-hmm. And they'd come in and talk to one author, then a second, then a third, and realize they have 132 to go. And there's just so much talent.
Uh-huh. And we talked to somebody who was writing about outhouses, and we talked to somebody who's writing about working with kids in New York City and thinking that his ideas might influence the Providence public schools. We talked to historians. We talked to somebody whose mother was a Native American and then sort of became part of the culture, the American culture. So we talked about all kinds of interests and passions, and that's what your organization represents.
And that's what our organization really wants to really exploit, and let the world know that I think the state of Rhode Island has more writers, more authors, more experts per capita. Mm-hmm. We find that often we're invited to do presentations and workshops mm-hmm. all over New England, sometimes all over the country. Mm-hmm. We had one of our writers came back from the Carter Museum and mm-hmm. library in Georgia. Others are in Maine. They've been gone to Canada. We've sent mm-hmm. someone to as far away as Dubai and London, and yet here locally, where you would think they'd be very successful, no one really knows about them.
Mm-hmm. And part of that must be publishing advertisement. Is that right or not?
Part of it is advertising and marketing. Part of it is there is no central way, or until we started to organize and coordinate this, for people to even know. Again, it's such a solitary business that it was hard to do that. And the Association of Rhode Island Authors, I think one of the things, too, in Rhode Island is we're so small that I know the business community sometimes and the political community thinks of that as a negative. Where for an arts group,
you mean the smallness of the
smallness
state?
of the state. Where for us, that's the biggest positive.
You can be a big fish in a small state.
But we can gather in 45 minutes every author in the state into one room. And you can't do that in Texas or California or Alaska or even in New York. Or
You're saying the geography would allow people to get together, or you're saying that the camaraderie pulls people together?
The size of the state allows us to have that camaraderie, allows us to gather quickly, share information quickly, and then hold these events like the expo we had in December.
And you feel that this has happened very rapidly. 5 years, 315 authors. Maybe there are 315 more that you'll have in the next 5 years.
It's very possible, though I'm not sure how many we can handle, but everyone is welcome. Last year, we officially filed for our 501c3 status, so we are a nonprofit arts organization. And we've also started to work with our group to not just for ourselves, but also to reach out to the community and to do some things, provide some educational resources, some mentoring and other processes for writers who are just getting into the business.
And if someone wants to take one of those courses, suppose you had one on publishing or self-publishing even, how would someone find one of those courses that you're teaching?
Well, we haven't taught. I teach courses separately, but through the association. I know when we do work, like when we did our expo, we coordinated that with several different programs and presentations. So we had our horror writers talking about horror writing. We had a presentation on self-publishing. We had one specifically on marketing. We did one on nonfiction writing, so that if your interests happened to lie in those areas, you had a way in. Because right now you're kind of at the mercy of either whatever collegiate program you happen to be in or randomly researching information on the internet, which can be a scary thing.
So are you working with different universities in Rhode Island?
Indirectly. So we have many of our members are staff and professors and at the different colleges. I think they're all represented in our group.
And you said you have partnerships with school libraries.
Well, one of the things we're very proud of, a couple of years ago, the school libraries passed out their summer reading lists. And all the wonderful books that you typically see on your summer reading lists were distributed, but there were no Rhode Island authors represented. And we worked with a group called RILINC, which is a collaboration of the Rhode Island school librarians, to collect together all the children's books that are written in the state by Rhode Island writers into a single collection. And that collection is housed at different high school libraries and elementary school libraries around the state. Right now it's housed in Westerly. But students from all over the state can borrow from that collection and read a book written by a local writer, along with all the great classics that they typically might read. So I think it's a great way for us to help promote the art that we're making.
What about something like a flyer that just tells people in schools what Rhode Island writers are doing in the newest book or the most interesting book? Or
oh, sure, we could do that. I mean, and we reached out to all the schools for our expo this past year to make sure that they had those kids and students that were talented in writing, that they could come to our expo and they'd be welcome there, and that we'd be able to provide some information.
And did that happen?
Oh, yeah. It was great to talk to so many young writers.
So you have something called Stillwater Press, and this is something that you initiated because you weren't able to find a publisher for your book, and then you started publishing your own work, but then other people, I assume other people come as well.
Stillwater River Publications, which is at stillwaterpress.com, is a company, a business company that my wife and I founded a few years ago. When we started the association, we were running into many, many people who were spending thousands of dollars on these online self-publishing packages that really were not delivering what they said they were delivering. So we started initially doing things for free. Folks wanted cover designs or interior designs or some marketing work, ebooks, and we were doing these things for them just as a favor. And we collaborated with so many different authors and realized that maybe there was a business in this. And in the last 2.5 years, we've published 60 books, all by local Rhode Island authors, or maybe just outside the borders into Massachusetts here or there. But we've done a number of terrific books that really have some value. and try to do it so that the author isn't left to the devices online and the predators that are out there, to try to give them real advice and connect them then to the writing and author and publishing community.
And those books are sold through local independent booksellers, or?
Yeah, we market them through, certainly online, through Amazon and all the other online retailers. We provide ebooks for your Kindle, your Nook, or Apple for iTunes. And the books themselves are available wholesale, as well as retail at whatever bookstore chooses to stock them.
Well, it sounds like a very important work to be done here in Rhode Island. I mean, it just seems like if people feel isolated and they don't even know where to sell their book and they try to send it out and it's frustrating, have someone who wants to hear them, hear their voice must be very, very exciting. So I commend you for that. Now, maybe we should talk a little bit about the books you have on the table.
Sure.
This one, called Shoreline, is a symposium or an anthology of 16 writers that you've selected.
What we did is one of our members had the idea that it would be a great way to feature the writing that we do, really the best of the best. And we had our own little internal contest. We had dozens and dozens of entries, and we picked the 19 best pieces, which include some short stories, some nonfiction, some prose, a few poems, a little bit of everything, and bound it and sold it in a single collection. It's called Shoreline, and we sell that from our website, online, and at a few different local gift shops and bookstores. And 100% of the proceeds to Shoreline go back to the association to help fund our programs and projects.
Okay, and so this would be something that would allow people to sort of get a handle on what kinds of people you published.
I think it's
the kinds of publishing that you do.
Well, it's the kinds of books and authors that are available here in the state.
Okay, and then you have two other books that look like you've written them.
These are my two novels.
And which is the one you spent 20 years on?
That was my first, called Confessions of the Meek and the Valiant. It's a gritty South Boston crime thriller. So it takes you right to the mean streets of South Boston. And it's really the story of a young man and how I tell you right from the beginning that he's a murderer, but he's such a nice guy. And it really is that transformation from how can you be such a nice person and be convicted and cause such mayhem. It's really inspired by you always see those shows on television or on the news reports where they talk about the wonderful young boy next door who, gosh, he was an altar boy and he was so nice and he came and mowed my lawn and shoveled my walk and then he's convicted of murder. But he seems like a nice guy. And that's kind of that story. Okay, well, how did you get into that? How did your head get there? It was just one of those stories I'd thought about for a long time. Is trying to get that classic good versus evil battle. That reluctant hero, the classic American, story of coming up out of good boy turns bad. Yep. And then how can you not live in New England and tie it into a mafia story? That's just natural. Or the back streets of Boston. Or the back streets of Boston to the mean streets of New York, and it just worked, I guess. Okay, well, good for you. And then there's another one, Manassas. Yes, is that right? Manassas. Manassas. Manassas is my second novel. Manassas means Island of the Little God, Island of Manitou, which is a Narragansett term. It's what the Narragansett tribe called Block Island before it was settled. Manitou. No. Manassas. Manassas. Okay. And what I did is I took all the history and the legends of Block Island and spun a story, a fictional tale, from a fictional island called Manassas, but populated it with all the real history of the island. So Manassas talks a lot about the pirate ships, Verrazano when he discovered the Narragansett Bay, the pirates who visited, even the island as a center for rum running in the 20s. It was such a terrific geographical point to bring liquor in from the international lines and get it off to Montauk in New York City, that the speedboats on Block Island were legendary. And all these different points in history. And Block Island has such an incredible history that touches on so many important things that happened in United States history. that again is forgotten about and not really focused on. We don't think of Block Island as that kind of historic place. You know, it's a great place to go in the summer. And
Well, they still say it's one of the most pure places to visit, untouched.
It absolutely is, and the stories and the legends of the island and all these things I thought would make such a wonderful novel. Yeah.
Well, so how long did you take researching this?
Block Island, I had a part-time job many, many years ago as a reporter. Block Island was part of my my beat. So I got to know the stories and some of the folks there, and kind of had, again, those ideas kind of kicking around in the back of your brain for many, many years. So while my first book took 20 years to write, Manassas took much less, maybe a year and a half to 2 years to write, although I had the thoughts.
Although you've been collecting the stories for quite a while.
Very long time.
Because a good book takes a lot of experience, doesn't it?
It does.
You can't just manufacture something. You have to really research. And
you do, and there was an old joke we used to kick around, like, don't trust a novelist, under 30. You really have to live. You have to live sometimes and gather those life experiences and see the problems and the contrast and the conflicts in the world and understand them a little bit before you can produce them in long-form fiction.
Well, this sounds like a wonderful read. Where would that be available?
Online at all your favorite online retailers, as well as a few local bookstores do carry them.
Well, what's the future of this group? What do you think will be the future?
Well, right now, as an association, we continue to try to keep our focus on the state and collecting state authors. But more recently, we started to kind of leave the friendly confines of Rhode Island and work our way to some more regional and national events. Several of our authors attended Comic-Con this past year, our crazy science fiction fantasy people. And they went and had a big display at Comic-Con here in Providence and have since been invited to a similar event in New York City. We attend, the IPNY, Independent Publisher New England events, up in and around the Boston area. We participate with them. The New England Author Expo, which is another New England-wide event that takes place each year up in the northern part of Massachusetts. So we're seeing that we also can be very effective bringing the word to local people that these authors exist. But now we can also start spreading it out and kind of focusing the rest of the region and the country that, hey, there's some great writers here in our state, and you want to pay attention to them. It's kind of like, so when the new writer comes out from Rhode Island, we want suddenly all those publishers and agents to say, hey, this is someone we need to pay attention to.
Because you do a little bit of vetting.
And I want to make sure our authors are smarter than all the other authors out there too.
There might be some smart ones in Massachusetts as well. Well, is there anything we've missed that you'd like to talk about?
We do so many different types of events throughout the year. We have an event called the Lively Literati, which is we give an opportunity for our writers to come and do public live reads. So each month we try to feature a writer or two to come out and talk about their work in front of a live audience, and then we usually drop the open mic out in the middle of the room afterwards, so that people can bring in their own poetry and other prose. We also participate in...
Where is that held, Lively Literati?
Held at the Elephant Room, which is a coffee tea house, crepe house in Patuxent Village in Cranston.
And any particular night?
It's usually held on the last Thursday of each month.
And so 7 o'clock-ish?
Yeah, about 7 o'clock start, and then we... Okay,
so if you want to see some of these writers, a great thing to do would be to go and order a crepe and a really good tea and listen while they read.
Absolutely. What's better than that?
Right. Nice way to spend an evening. Well, thank you so much for coming to Good News Rhode Island.
Very welcome.
We certainly wish you and all the 315 plus writers that will become part of ARIA, and we will be happy to hear that you've spread all over the country and that somehow Rhode Island writers are getting known for the talented people that they are.
Well, thanks again for having me on.
Thank you so much. Thanks for watching Good News Rhode Island. And we do hope that you're part of the good news of Rhode Island. And if not, we hope there's good news around the corner and that you'll find it. Thank you for watching.